Hello everyone, welcome to How to Paint Imotekh the Stormlord Cloak Edition. So here I'm going to be teaching you how to paint specifically Imotekh the Stormlord's Cloak. So we started by spraying with Chaos Black, or you can just do any black, or, you know, it really doesn't matter. It's going to be covered up anyways, but I like Chaos Black. Next we're going to move on to Incubi Darkness. So the first step here is to literally coat the entire cloak in Incubi Darkness. This is just going to make all of the future next steps much easier. So just keep painting it this it's kind of like a dark blue with a slight green tint to it. So if you paint the scarabs a little bit, it's fine. You're going to be painting over them anyways, so you don't really have to be that careful about touching them or not. But this is going to require probably 2 coats, I would say. But, you know, make sure it's kind of thin, not too thick, because you're going to be painting over it later and you don't want the layers too thick. Once that is done, you're going to be taking Incubi Darkness out again, assuming you still have it open, and Cabalite Green. And this is where we're first going to start layering the cloak, because the cloak is a beautiful blend of these 4 colors, and you need to make these seamless transitions, starting from Incubi Darkness all the way down to Gauss Blaster Green. So we're going to start with these 2 blue, or blue-greens, or whatever they are. These 2 colors. So first I'm touching up some parts I may have missed, just to make sure I have that nice full single color before. Now we're going to start mixing. So what we're going to be doing is, first we're going to start with just a nice mix with these 2 blues. And we're going to wet blend it. And if you're unfamiliar with wet blending, I'm sure there's tons of videos explaining exactly what it is, but basically what I'm doing is I'm taking first color and I'm taking the second color, pushing them together, blending them as it's in the name, and then wetting them down with water or medium or whatever you want to use. I just use water. I don't know. I don't really think I need a medium here. Makes it kind of thinner, so you use whatever you want to thin it down, but water's the easiest for me, at least. So what you're going to do is you can kind of use the box art or this tutorial as an example of where you want the first kind of lighter coats to be, and you kind of want to look for like the high points on this model. Those are where it's going to be really, really bright. But honestly, you can do this anywhere if you want to get creative with it. But otherwise, you can use the box art or you can use my tutorial to figure out exactly where to paint it. So as you see, I'm just being kind of sporadic with it, just kind of painting it. Like I'm not staying within the lines of the scales, if you will. Just kind of painting around. And the goal here is that we want to start building up these layers. So as you see, this is quite thin. This is going to take multiple layers, at least once we start getting to the lighter colors. This first layer, I might just do this 1 layer, but right now we're just working with these 2 colors. And we're going to work on both the front and the back end of the cloak. As you see now, we're working on the inside of the cloak, kind of like on the left shoulder pad down, as well as the right side of the cloak all the way to the tip. Now we're just focusing on Cabalite Green. So since we made that little transition between the 2 colors, now we're just going to focus on Cabalite Green. Basically painting all the areas I just painted, but just slightly less. Like we said, you want to transition it, meaning you want to just start painting less and less area as the paints get lighter. And these next paints are layer paints, very thin. You still want to thin them down a little bit and just do a lot of coats. Not like a lot, but like I probably do about 2 or 3 coats once I start getting to these lighter layers. And as you can see, I'm kind of working in the transitions as I go. Like if I need to go back to a step, like if I'm doing Cabalite Green and I notice that the transition's just not there, then I'll go from the Cabalite Green plus the Incubi Darkness, mix them together, kind of work it in so it's just a little bit smoother. This is just the blocking step, so you don't have to be too perfect with this right now. Just kind of start getting those colors on the cloak, slowly but surely. So now we're going to move on to Sybarite Green. This is a very thin paint. You're going to have to do a lot of coats. When I say a lot, I mean a lot. So first we're going to use Sybarite Green and Cabalite Green. For some reason, while I was filming, I opened up the Sybarite Green and I was like, wait, you know what? I'm not quite ready to move on yet. So I, for some reason, started to do another layer of Cabalite Green. Because that's what I'm saying. Like, it takes a lot of layers. It just does. These colors kind of stink. They're not bad. They're very thin. It's a layer paint. Of course it's going to be thin. So now I'm finally moving on to that Sybarite Green as I opened earlier. So now we're going to mix the 2 colors. You want to start a little bit more on the darker colors, and then you can work your way down to the lighter colors. So you see I got a nice mix between these 2 colors. So again, I'm going to start going over where I was before, but just slightly less, as I did last time. As you can see, I'm mixing with the darker and the lighter, so I get a little bit more of a better transition. Just kind of working my way down. And as you can see, the more and more coats we're doing, I'm starting to transition to just the more Sybarite Green, basically just going less and less Cabalite Green. Now I might stop here and there and try and, transition it a little bit better. So now that we've kind of done this Cabalite Green, Sybarite Green mix, we're going to just move on to the Sybarite Green. And let me tell you, this is going to take a lot of coats, and it's a kind of weird chunky-ish paint, so you need to thin it. You need to really thin it. As you can see, it is very bright. It looks a lot different than what we've been working on. That's okay. It's gonna look like this. Just keep going with it. I promise it's gonna turn out great. I promise. Look at that. It's very thin. Looks like milk almost. I don't really know of a good comparison. It looks bad. First coat looks freaking terrible. Just terrible. Just keep going with it. It's way too harsh of a transition. Doesn't matter. Keep going with it. And I think I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here, but I think I did upwards of 4 or 5 coats with this paint. I kid you not. 4 or 5 coats. Now you might say, Eric, why don't you just airbrush this? Why don't you just use a different paint that's the same thing so that you can get the coats better? Because I like to torture myself with GW paints. I love it. I love the challenge of having to use these very low pigmented paints that just don't cover well. And I'm sure you do too. which is why you're watching this exact video. So as you see, that's what 1 or 2 coats looks like. Then we're going to move on to the Gauss Blaster Green. So this is where we're going to get the highest, most bright highlight. Now we are still going to mix it with the Sybarite Green, as you can see. And we're kind of just going to work the very edges. That's what we're doing. We're working the edges, like the very ends. You're not highlighting with it. It's not what we're doing. We're not highlighting anything. We're just getting the highest points with this mixture. And I dropped it. Go me. As you can see, I blended so much it literally bled through my palette, my parchment paper. That's how much wet blending you're going to be doing. It's going to bleed through your paper. As you can see, I kind of have a really high mix of Gauss Blaster Green here. This is going to be the very top highlight. It's going to be super bright. You want this. So do a coat or 2 of this in the very highest spots. Look at that. All that hard work for some very crappy transitions. Now the fun part, we get to move all the way backwards. As you can see, all the way backwards. We're going to start at the top layer and start wet blending backwards. So we finished on Gauss Blaster Green. Now we're starting with Gauss Blaster Green and mixing with Sybarite Green. And we're going to smooth those transitions in. It's not very smooth right now. It's very chunky. It's very splotchy. It looks bad. It does. Which is why we're doing this step. You worked forward. Now we're working backwards. As you can see, I'm just keeping it very thin. I'm always watering my brush down when it comes to this step. I am not using straight out of the pot. Always water it down. You want the blends. You want it to blend. And if you see right here, you have a harsh transition. I'm going to do this. I'm going to dip my brush in a little bit of water and then just kind of transition it. You see how I'm kind of like using like a crayon? I'm just kind of like going back and forth with it. That's what you want to do. Just make it as wet as possible. I'm going to stop on that one for a sec. Okay, you get the joke. And transition it. You're going to have to do a lot of back and forth here. If you see a part where you're like, that's too bright, that's too light, like I did right here, I'm like, no, that's way too bright. Mix it in a little bit more green, bad, more green. That's going to happen. You're going to just have to take your other paints and transition it a little bit more. Wet blend it a little bit more. The key here is water. Just keep mixing it in. Just keep working your way backwards. You have it blocked out. Just get the transitions good. So you can see we're basically to the Cab-White Green step. We're almost there. Right now we have Sybarite Green with a little bit of Cab-White Green. We're almost to just Cab-White Green. And I'll tell you what, I almost gave up. I almost stopped. I was painting this thing, and I was like, this looks like garbage. But you just got to keep adding coats. You got to just keep blending it. And I promise you, it's going to look great. Just watch this. Follow this. It'll turn out okay. More water. best part about blending is you can kind of see the coats that are under. The thinner the paint is, the more the undertone shows through the layer you're putting on top, and it just makes it look really, really good. And as you can see, I'm onto the final step, from Cabalite Green to Inky by Darkness. This is the final step. Get that last little smooth transition in. By the time you're done with it and it's all dry, it's going to look immaculate, amazing, wonderful. As you can see, it looks miles better, just so much better. I mean, look at that. The blends are a lot better, a lot smoother transition. Next, we're moving on to just Gauss Blaster Green. This is where you're gonna either like go on the edges, where you're already doing like the transitions, and just get that final highlight. We wouldn't have used just Gauss Blaster Green at this point, and this is where we're doing it. Wherever it's extremely bright, like maybe just a couple scales, couple high point scales, as you can see right here, we're gonna add just this color to it. You don't even need to blend it, just add it. It's so thin, it's gonna look awesome. I will be honest, this was a ton of fun to paint. I didn't think I could do it. Here we are, with a nice fancy looking new Imotekh the Stormlord cloak. Now, once all your hard work is done, you have your nice fancy Imotekh model and dynasty, whatever dynasty you want. Here I have the Nihilakh dynasty. You just put it together, and this is what you're going to be left with. A really nice model with a really nice cloak. I hope this helped. Please leave any feedback. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Bye.